Once I exit the train, I have to listen carefully, and then I have to, be real careful moving around.
That takes courage, because Anatoly can't see. He's been blind since childhood. 29-year-old Anatoly is one of the very few blind who attempt to navigate the metro or even head out onto Moscow's streets. His life changed completely when he went blind at the age of 12. For a whole year, Anatoly didn't even go to school. At 13, Anatoly returned to school and began to excel. He went on to enroll at the highly prestigious Moscow State University, where he studied public administration. He graduated from university in 2007, convinced that every person with a disability has the right to live an active life. He joined the All Russia Association of the Blind. His search for solutions led him to discover an ingenious new technology. The satellites transmit the user's exact position to a receiver.
Now it tells me that it is a park.
And then, combining with a cell phone, a voice gives the user directions to follow, right down to the last detail. Anatoly also found this remarkable tool. This voice recognition software enables users to harness the almost limitless information available on the internet.
I'm going through the just emails that are in my inbox. 13 messages altogether.
Anatoly's goal is to change Russia not just for blind people, but for all people with disabilities. Yevgenia Voskobornikova, who was working as a model, but a car accident caused by a drunk driver left her with a broken spine.
When it happened, I had only one goal: to survive somehow.
Today, she's landed a job as a reporter with Moscow-based TV Rain. But even this elegantly designed, state-of-the-art TV studio doesn't have a functioning elevator after 6 p.m. Moscow has declared that it'll be barrier-free by 2020, meaning that people in wheelchairs should be able to enter any public building or facility. Another major shift came in 2008, when the Russian Federation signed the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It's a step, they believe, towards altering perceptions and creating new openings.
I've been living on the streets for around 13 or 14 years. My name is Marisol. I'm 24 years old. My son's called Diego, and he's nearly 1.
Marisol is one of the many young people, mostly in their teens and 20s, who carve a life for themselves in the squalid and often dangerous conditions of the Mexico City streets. Official figures cite some 3,000 people living on the streets. Many argue the figure is 10 times higher. Today, Marisol lives in a flimsy shack amidst piles of rubbish with a gang of other kids she calls her family. Life expectancy for these kids is just 30 years old.
Firstly, you can die from drugs.
It's called Mona, and it kills hunger and temporarily lifts the kids out of the horror of their daily lives. The United Nations Population Fund in Mexico, which is working with the Mexican government to help these kids at risk.
Mexico
is facing great challenges for the future. So it's fundamental that public policies are adopted which fully recognize the need of young people and guarantee them a future filled with promise and opportunities.
If she can be persuaded to leave the dangerous life of violence and drugs, there's a chance that Diego won't be taken away from her, as happened to all 3 of her other children. Although still living in the shack with her boyfriend, it seems Marisol is determined to make some changes in her life and not lose Diego too. Now she visits daily the shelter. They receive medical care.
I don't know what the future holds for my kids. If they're going to be the same as me or worse than me. I don't know, but I've got to get out of all of this, both for my kids and for me. I'm going to do it. I'm going to come through this.
tiny hands, nimble fingers. These children are trying to recover anything of value at this dump site in Accra, Ghana. It's dangerous work. Exposure to carcinogens, toxic fumes and contaminated soil may prove deadly, experts say. Electronic waste, or e-waste, is the third fastest growing source of rubbish in the world. Some 40 to 50 million tons of cell phones, televisions, refrigerators and computers are discarded every year worldwide. Waste from computer circuit boards and batteries often contain mercury and cadmium, a human carcinogen that causes damage to the lungs and liver, say health experts. Computers and other electronic waste have been shipped from developed countries to less developed nations for years.
Up to 3/4 of these shipments of so-called reconditioned computers or computers for second-hand use are in fact not functional anymore.
UNEP is now launching a project to help track the flow of cell phones, computers and other electronic waste from the United States to Africa and Asia.
These waste dumps cost money, they need to be managed, so if we can reduce the volume of waste, we have both an environmental and an economic benefit.
The group, called the E-Waste Alliance, is comprised of 8 companies dedicated to discovering ways to manage e-waste responsibly. The company, Just PCs in Cape Town, is an alliance partner.
We try to refurbish as much as possible components and computers so that there's less e-waste output in the end.
These ventures are bringing much-needed business to South African companies, as well as creating jobs for the country's unemployed. But many experts believe that a lasting solution rests not only with companies, but with consumers. They say that until people stop buying things they don't need with money they don't have. In a large open theatre in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the DRC, dancers rehearse a scene from a new ballet the likes of which have never been seen here before. Movement, music and story are designed to express a harsh reality, one that has plagued this war-torn nation for years: sexual violence. This is the story of how the love of dance, the power of art, and the deep desire of a group of people from very different backgrounds came together to try, in their own way, to bring some change to a country in peril. It all began with the National Ballet of Congo and a small but powerful woman director who came from a world away, in New York City.
I tried to learn about what kind of issues were facing women there.
A civil war which, according to UN estimates, has left some 5 million people dead as a result of fighting, diseases and starvation since 1998. Rape has become a weapon of war here.
I think it has to do with the attitudes that this is inevitable as one of the weapons or tactics of war.
But the more Carmen Nicole Smith learned, the more she came to believe that this ballet would have to address not only the issue of sexual violence in conflict, but also the deeply entrenched attitudes about inequality between men and women in the DRC. Carmen says the project, called Dancing to Respect, uses dance as an expressive and cathartic way. Opening night, the lights go on, the dance begins. The struggles between the genders play out in front of the audience. But over the course of the story, the relationship between men and women begin to change as the village women stand up for themselves and slowly gain respect.
I think paying attention to heavy issues doesn't necessarily mean that it's mournful. It's the beginning of an awareness, and then approaching it with a positive perspective is exciting.
Their customs, their rituals, are rooted in thousands of years of tradition. They are the Maasai from Kenya in East Africa. Many young Maasai abandoning their communities in search of education and jobs.
We always say when an elder dies, it's just like the light burning out. So we want to get that knowledge before this generation goes.
So John set out on a groundbreaking journey. Alongside him on this crusade is a colleague.
My name is Anne. I'm part of the Maasai community.
But Anne and John knew they could not go it alone. And so in 2003, John took an innovative step. He approached the United Nations World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, for help.
They want greater recognition. They want the right to control access to and use of their indigenous knowledge systems.
WIPO provided the recording equipment and, together with America's Library of Congress and Duke University, trained John and Anne how to use it. They arrive in Maasai villages. As the group begin their performance, John and Anne document their every move.
Music is a very big part of the culture of this community.
John and Anne, listening to them back in their headphones, is an exciting moment.
Very clear.
All these discoveries are milestones in John and Anne's quest to keep their culture alive.
The project has empowered the Maasai to seize control over the recording of their own histories, their own stories. The program turns indigenous into intellectual property owners. It makes them stakeholders and they can benefit.
For John, being a keeper of the culture is a gift he has been given, he says.
I will tell all the indigenous peoples across the world to empower the community themselves to determine their destiny.